was going to do it.
It's a bigger addiction than drugs a lot of times.
There is a great need for concern.
Have we entered a techno-utopia or a virtual prison?
Pretty much my life consisted of media in some way, shape, or form.
I just got so sucked up in it, it just kind of took over part of my life.
Is our social experience richer and deeper, or more shallow and artificial?
I was on Facebook every day, all day long.
We stand a chance of roboticizing relationships.
The trivia of youth are amplified by these digital tools.
Men are trying to escape into the world of games. We've arranged the culture to trick their brains into thinking that they've done something when in fact they haven't.
You can't think, I'll watch and I'll listen, but I won't do.
Is there hope of finding freedom?
I found that there's more of a freedom without media, in all honesty.
When I was able to let go, there was such incredible freedom.
This world would be a completely different place if we weren't all glued to a screen.
There's a need to break free from these chains that bind us.
When you unplug, all of these things that are part of God's design for us begin to be restored.
So glad to see everybody here. Thank you so much for coming and being on time. I really do appreciate that, and I know our team that's been working so effortlessly. Wait, is that the right word? Effortlessly? Tirelessly working to put this weekend program together. Appreciate you as well. So we're going to start off with our special praise team. We brought them all the way in from Bryan College Station. Promise and Sarah, come on down. I have a special fun song I'd like to teach you, and then they're going to also come and lead out in a song service. Maybe we can do a few selections and maybe get a suggestion from our group here. So first, second, last. Okay, do my song first. Okay, so you need a chair. You guys should sit next to me. Yeah, you just put that right there on the stage. Yeah. Have you ever, you know the song "Love Lifted Me"? Yeah. A very easy song. I don't want to lose my pen. But there's just some added movement. Okay, so it's been a long day. A Sabbath, which is that wonderful day of rest where we all really rest, right? And fill our day up with a whole bunch of stuff. So, and we eat a nice, temperate meal. We don't stuff ourselves. And so now we're going to stretch it out and work off those calories, okay? So it's just one line. I believe we're not going into all the verses, but you go lean forward, lean backward, to the left. We got to go to our right for their left, to the right. Stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right. So lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right. Stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right. And then you keep singing Love Lifted Me while you continue moving in those movements, okay? You got it? Here we go. Lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right. Stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right. Lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right. Stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right. Love lifted me. Love lifted me. Love lifted me. When nothing else could help. Love lifted me. Hallelujah. Love lifted me. When nothing else could help. Love lifted job on that one. Do y'all want to try it again? Oh, I love that. I love that. So it's a love lifted me. Love lifted me. So you go back into lean forward, lean backward. After you stand up and sit down, you go back into lean forward, lean backward, left to right. Right? I know, it takes a lot of coordination. Yeah, so I'm going to go right for y'all's left. So I wish we had a couple more mics, but we need someone to maybe hum. Lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right, to keep us. Yes. Who wants to do lean forward, lean backwards to keep us on task? Muriel, one young child. If y'all can help keep us on the lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right, stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right, lean forward, lean backward, left, right. Okay, that's some modifications. We'll do modifications. All right. And then this side will sing Love Lifted Me, but y'all help us out with the lean forward, lean backward. One of us can continue with the, you ladies sing Love Lifted Me, and I'll sing lean forward, lean backward. Can we have a couple more mics? I don't know. Do you want to? Lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right. Stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right. Lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right. Stand up, sit down. Hold it out. Love lifted me. Okay, that was about 5,000 calories right there. Okay. Now we're going to move on into what other songs did you ladies have for us? Go for it.
So the next song that we're gonna sing is "Lord, I lift Your name on high," because we should lift the name of the Lord on very high.
Test. Oh, this should be good.
I'm so glad you
Lord, I lift your name on high. Beautiful.
For the last song, could you please stand up and sing with us? Hymn 330.
Take my life and let it be. Thank you, ladies. Now, if we were to think about these songs, love lifting us and asking Lord to take our life, and what was it? The second song we sang was Lord, I lift your name on high. And all of these songs can remind us of how we spend our time when it comes to the subject matter that we're learning about all weekend long. If Christ is the center of our life, then he can help us with every aspect of media discernment. Now we can open our time with prayer now, and then we have a special song for us. I personally think it's especially for the kids. So are all the kids in here that could be in here? They're all in here? Do we need to rally anybody from out in the foyer? So we'll open up with prayer, and then I have just a couple more activities, and then we'll have a special song by Philip.
Please bow your heads with me. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we invite you to be here with us. We invite you to be part of this afternoon as we learn more about what social media does to us, our community. And Lord, we also want to bring you praise and honor. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I probably said it backwards. Okay, so we're gonna do some quick activities. I'd like a volunteer. Last night we had MJ do a little charade for us, and he did a great job, didn't he? Reenacting a mother multitasking, swiping on a laptop to look at a recipe, taking care. Does this even take care of a baby? On the phone, instructing a child to do their homework. How many of you mothers do all of that sometimes, or have you done that before? And so, I'm going to invite a volunteer. Anybody you're quick, you think on your feet. I would love someone over the age of 15. An adult would be lovely. I'll pick some kids in a little bit. No adults? Oh, y'all are so shy. Why is everybody so shy? Okay, promise. Come on up. Come on down. All right, y'all choose a charade or a role play. The difference is the charade, she can't talk. Role play, she can talk. Okay, charade. All right, so this is the charade box. Okay, she's gonna pick something out of the box. Don't tell anybody, and she can't talk, but she's gonna reenact that, and you have to guess what it is. And you have 30 seconds. All right, so you need my help.
Yeah.
All right, so you be, which one do you want to be? Okay, you got a phone? Somebody say action. Ding, 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 ding. Yeah. All right. So, what was your charade?
It was a friend pressuring another friend to watch a violent movie.
That's pretty close. Let's take that. Okay, young people, how do you deal with that? If somebody comes and sticks their phone, I mean, don't y'all notice that? People just shove their phone in your face. Hey, look at this. You need to know how to deal with that. Talk to your parents about it. Okay, another volunteer. Josh, I don't know, and you might need don't worry, Evan, I will pick you. He might need a partner. So, charade, no talking, role play, you can talk. Which one? Role play. All right, so he's going to pick a social media, and you have to guess what social media he's on, and he's going to pick one character, and you have to guess what character he is. Okay? So, since you might need your hands, so you can say anything, just don't say what's on those cards, and give as many clues as possible so they can guess the social media that you're on and the character that you are. And then use something that will let them know that it's him. Okay, these are, Sure. These are all Bible characters, by the way. All right, let me take that. Don't let them see. All right, I'll do that one. And you pick another one, and I'll act with you. He's picking another Bible character. We should use 2 mics. Does this one work? All right, who is it?
Just not a girl. Just pick. Here. Okay. Oh. Okay, do the first one. No, just remember who that was, who that person was. Shh, don't tell anybody. All right, go ahead. You volunteered.
You can talk. Who has my phone?
It's over there. Wait. Oh, works.
We're gonna talk to each other through that social media. Ready?
Okay.
Man, I hope I can get her hair right. I don't know this social. I'm gonna make sure that I tweet the king to make sure that he lets her come in with this new hairdo. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, it was Twitter.
Well, no, it's not Esther though. It is Twitter, but I'm not Esther. Close. Close. Esther's hairstylist. Sure, but use this social media. Okay. I don't even know what Discord? That is. Do you know? Do that one. Don't say it out loud. Do you know how to do that one? Good job. Good job, Kanisha. He doesn't know any of these things. No, I do. That one. I don't have that one. All right, this one's so so easy. All right, do that one.
God told you not to. I guess I have to write. I don't know. I guess I have to write on. Wait. Oh, I got one. I guess I have to type to his email address. I don't know.
You're doing good.
I guess I could. Huh? I guess I could. I guess I have to. Boy. I guess I have to type to his email address and tell him what you did. What?
So you said God told what?
God told you not to eat that. Huh? What? Who's okay, Adam.
Adam, and what social media is he using?
I made it very obvious. Yes.
Email. Very good.
I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. Thanks.
Huh? Is email social media? I guess I'm a dinosaur. I don't know. Yeah, you communicate through email. I guess it's the old school social media. Without further ado, the warm-up.
This is the one for the kids, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You need a mic.
No, I don't need a mic.
Which one?
Need a mic? Okay.
Test.
Okay, we're streaming. Complicated. Okay. All right, so I don't often get asked to do this song, and if my wife was here, she'd be crawling under one of the chairs because it's her least favorite song. And I love my wife, and she loves my music. But I can't live this one down because you guys don't know my music, but I wrote this many years ago while living in Chicago. And it goes like this. Traffic jam, add some peanut butter, make a sandwich and come together in communal agony as we all agreed rather be driving down this road doing 70. Traffic jam. Traffic jam. Traffic jam, unavoidable, Now and then we have some trouble when everything in life seems to hesitate. They say good things come to those who wait. Traffic jam. Traffic jam. Traffic jam makes us appreciate all the times we never have to wait. Even though we don't like to learn this way, patience is a virtue any day. Traffic jam, just add some peanut butter, make a sandwich and come together in communal agony as we all agreed. Rather be driving down this road doing 70. Now the strange thing is, children don't drive, or they shouldn't be if they are. So it's kind of a weird phenomena that over the years, this is like a favorite song of many children. I hear about it all the time. It's like, oh, our kids just love Traffic Jam. It's like they don't drive, but they like the peanut butter part. You know, you just put peanut butter in a song and you're gonna get some fans among some younger audiences, I guess. But anyway, I started writing that out in Chicago, and I never finished the song because it was not meant to be ever a song. It was meant to keep my sanity while in one of the most horrific traffic jams I'd ever been in. So I just like made a song in my head while sitting in traffic for hours. And I set it aside, and then we moved out to the small town of Mount Carroll, Illinois, town of 1,700 people, and I got inspired to finish the song. Traffic jam left the city to drive the country roads of tranquility. No aggravations as I'm free to fly. Empty two-lane roads of paradise. Traffic jam. Traffic jam. Traffic jam, hold on, not so fast. Driving utopia is not here at last. Oh well, so much for this country drive. Stuck behind a tractor pushing 25. A tractor pushing 25. It's really a problem out there, you know. Traffic jam makes us appreciate all the times we never have to wait. Even though we don't like to learn this way, patience is a virtue any day. Traffic jam, just add some peanut butter, make a sandwich and come together in communal agony as we all agreed. Rather be driving down this road doing 70. Traffic jam makes us appreciate all the times we never have to wait. Even though we don't like to learn this way, patience is a virtue any day. Traffic jam, just add some peanut butter, make a sandwich and come together in communal agony as we all agreed. Rather be driving down this road doing 70. Traffic jam makes us appreciate all the times we never have to wait. And even though we don't like to learn this way, patience is a virtue any day.
Thank you for that, Philip. That was fun. I love that song. So we're gonna just transition while, I don't know, you can start setting up. We're gonna go into the first presentation, but before we go into that, we have a quick, I don't know if you call it anecdotal story, that an article that my husband stumbled upon. Then after he shares that, we're gonna put the breakout sessions, the titles on the screen, so you can start thinking about what class you want to go to, and then that will allow for us to be able to direct everybody to the different breakout sessions that are out in the rooms, and also think about if you'd like to facilitate that class. Very simple. You just, if you know how to press play and you breathe and have a heartbeat, you can facilitate the class. So just start thinking about that.
All right. So I just want to give a precursor and a warning. Kids, don't try this at home. But the headline says, Missing 10-year-old Florida boy steals mom's car for a 200-mile joyride with sister. This is on the New York Post. No, not advice, not advice. But I want you to listen to this because it's a warning. Okay? It's funny, but it's a warning. Actually, it's not funny, but it says a 10-year-old boy and his 11-year-old sister stole their mom's car and went for an early morning joyride before they were caught more than 200 miles away from their Florida home, according to police. The siblings' adventure ended with when deputies from the Alachua County Sheriff's Office spotted a white sedan driving on I-75 in Alachua, A-L-A-C-H-U-A, Alachua, near Gainesville, and pulled the car over around 3:50 a.m. Because the vehicle was stolen, deputies conducted a high-risk traffic stop, but they were shocked when they found the young boy in the driver's seat and his older sister beside him. Photos from the scene released by the sheriff's office show both children surrendering. The kids both held their hands in the air as they exited the vehicle surrounded by police. Now, this is not the exact article that I wrote. Huh? That I read, sorry. No, I didn't write this. But in the article that I actually read from another source, said the mom that night had taken the child's phone away, the 11-year-old sister's phone away, and as a result, she wanted to run away to California. So her brother stole the car, they took their clothes, jumped in the car, and took off. So just to let you know, these devices can have an effect that goes well beyond just getting stuck in social media. It can place ideas in children's heads that don't belong there. So that's just a little precursor and a little warning to parents as to how to monitor and even decide whether or not to give one of these things to your kids. That goes for computer use and tablet use as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And as the titles of the breakouts are set back on the screen for you to start thinking about it, this is my own personal opinion. If your babies are playing on phones and you take the phone away and they start screaming, I feel like the addiction has begun. That's just my own personal opinion. So check out those titles, and Philip, you're welcome to start whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be with your church this weekend, and so thank you for the invitation. I don't go out and speak too often anymore because I'm pastoring full time. But on occasion, especially if it's in Texas, I'm more inclined to say yes. So, but this is a subject, the subject of media, technology, entertainment is something I have been speaking about for 20 years now. And so there's a lot that's changed in 20 years. But it's not getting easier. You know, parenting has always been difficult. Ask God, and then Adam and Eve. You know, so you don't need technology to have challenges in parenting. Just read the first 50 chapters of the Bible, and you're going to see plenty of problems without smartphones or video games or social media. But you add all those things to an already difficult job, and now we have a monumental task. But today, this afternoon, we're going to talk about technology and regaining focus in an age of digital distractions. Because when I started 20 years ago, one of the challenges I faced was the majority of people in the church, adults, when I would try to talk about these things, basically were just as bad as the teens, you know, with their fingers in their ears and essentially saying, you know, why are you spoiling spoiling all of our fun? You know, why throw cold water on us? And I'm like, no, I'm advocating for wisdom because I'm not anti-media, I'm not anti-technology, I'm not anti-entertainment, but I believe we have need of great wisdom, and there's benefits. And there's an intersection of our faith and living in the 21st century, and that's what we want to talk about. So I'm coming at this from the perspective of trying to help both young people and parents. This is good for young people to hear somebody that's not in their home talk about those things. It's an advantage to you parents, because then they hear somebody else that's like the expert going like, oh, well, that's what mom and dad say. Well, guess what? Mom and dad's also experts half the time, you know? And so I just want to come alongside families and help them. Okay, so as we think about technology in particular, on May 24th, 1844, our nation was actually introduced to one of the biggest leaps in technology that would change the world and usher in the digital age, believe it or not. And this game-changing technology, you ready for it, was the telegraph. And you might think, well, you know, what in the world? Well, on May 24th, 1844, Samuel Morse sent a message from the old Supreme Court chamber in the Capitol in Washington. Yes, and to the Mount Clair Depot in Baltimore, and he quoted a Bible verse. What hath God wrought? He was a Christian man, and he believed that this invention would serve the good of humanity. And so the world was on the brink of a paradigm shift, but why was this such a game-changing technology? So let's pause for a moment. And so the wireless telegraph was the first invention for communication that allowed humans to communicate beyond eyesight and beyond earshot, is what they would say. So before that, you couldn't simultaneously send a message beyond what you could see or hear. You know, the fastest, you could send a letter across the United States by the Pony Express, and that would take a week of just horses running nonstop or longer, you know. But this idea of being able to communicate simultaneously. So it was this technology which is actually known as the grandfather of all the newer technologies, which would change the way we would communicate, the way we would gather and disseminate news, the way we would work, the way we would play. It would affect homes, businesses, it affects churches, the government, and it would also affect how we relate to one another. And so this was the granddaddy of, this was what gave way to the telephone. So the telegraph evolved into the telephone, going from dots and dashes to being able to send signal, voice through lines, and then eventually radio. So the wireless telegraph, being able to get rid of the wires and send this over, initially dots and dashes, but then audio. In fact, this is kind of a truncated, version. I like the history of all this. There was a man, Reginald Fessenden, who was an inventor, and he was the one who invented radio. He was the one who first had the idea, I think we can put audio through wireless. And so he was a Christian man, and the first radio broadcast, which I believe was in 1906, if my memory serves me right, was on Christmas Eve, and he read a scripture, and his wife played a violin, and they sang "O Holy Night," and that was the first radio broadcast done by a Christian. Now, the only people that would hear it were unsuspecting telegraph operators within reach. So instead of like beep 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 beep, you would hear, "Hello, this is Reginald Fessenden," you know. So, so radio predates then the television, because then it was like, now we can move these signals, we can move video as well as audio, and then eventually gave rise to the internet. So, but it created a whole new world. And in fact, in my documentary Captivated, I interviewed author Maggie Jackson, who wrote this book called Distracted. And so let me just qualify this. If you've seen Captivated, or if you plan on watching Captivated, most of the people I interview are Christians. A few of them are not. So we kind of mixed it up with some other authors and professionals. Maggie Jackson is not a Christian woman, but she writes about this subject. But she told an interesting story, which we included in the documentary, about how these technologies and even the telegraph changed, the wireless telegraph changed so many things. So she brings up the fact that there was a book written in the 1800s called Wired Love. I think it came out in 1890. And this was a novel written about two telegraph operators who worked for the telegraph company and were responsible for relaying messages. And in their off time, they began a romance, an online romance. Now, this was written in 1890. So they're telegraphing each other, and they fall in love online. And this was based on what was happening at the time, which these telegraph operators were the early internet. Except it was very limited. And so they were learning how to play checkers and chess online. They were communicating when they weren't working, passing along notes, and in this fictional account, falling in love. Well, in that story, these two, they eventually want to meet, and this man wants to propose to this woman to marry her. So they get together, but once they're together in person, they're tongue-tied, and they really don't know how to communicate with one another. And so he's kind of doesn't know what to do. So he rents 2 rooms of a boarding house and strings a telegraph line between them in order for him to propose to her. So this is in 1890. So it's very, thoughtful about, wow, where is all of this going? So, but let's talk about the wireless telegraph, because there's a story that teaches us a lot from the Titanic, because the Titanic in 1912 not only was an incredible ship that had been built, but it had the latest technology, which included the wireless telegraph. And the purpose of it was primarily from ship-to-ship communication and from ship-to-shore communication, essential communication. But because this was a luxury liner, what they decided to do was, for a fee, we're going to allow passengers to send or receive telegraphs, wireless telegraphs. So the wireless operators ended up working around the clock, for the most part, sending passenger telegrams. And in fact, they were so behind that there was a particular day where they were receiving communication, the Titanic was receiving communication from other ships about icebergs at very specific coordinates. Those telegrams were written down, and they were never delivered to the bridge. They never made it to the people that needed to know what was actually happening. And the reason why, and this has been documented, was that they were just so busy sending and receiving passenger telegrams and behind that the telegraph operator set that important information at his elbow, thinking, I'll get to it as soon as I can, and then continued to send passenger telegrams until it was too late. So that is, and I don't say this, I'm not trying to be funny about it, but when we think of like texting and driving, this was potentially the earliest texting, driving type of accident where you're not paying attention to what's most important. And let me quote from Second Officer Charles Lightoller. So this is him here. He says, the one vital report that came through but which never reached the bridge was from the Mesaba. Phillips, a wireless operator on watch who received the message, was not to know the extreme urgency of the warning or that we were at the time actually entering the area given by the Mesaba and was literally packed with icebergs, field ice, and growlers. He was very busy working wireless messages to and from Cape Race. Later, when standing with others on the upturned boat, Phillips explained when I said that I did not recollect any Mesaba report, and he quotes him, I just put that message under a paperweight at my elbow just until I squared up what I was doing before sending it to the bridge. And he goes on to say that delay proved fatal. So it's a sober illustration of the potential distractions that come along with the benefits of technology. Neil Postman, who's probably best known for his book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, but he wrote several books, he was a professor. He said in his book, Technopoly, it's a mistake to suppose that any technological innovation has a one-sided effect. Every technology is both a burden and a blessing, not either or, but this and that. We have to keep that in mind as we're going to be, this generation is going to be dealing with things like AI and other new technologies that are coming along. We just have to take this into account. It's not going to be one-sided. And it's not going to be all on one side, all on the other side. There's going to be blessings and there's going to be burdens. It's going to be this and that. George Barna, I quoted this yesterday, but if you weren't here yesterday, George Barna once wrote, "Media exposure has become America's most widespread and serious addiction." So, of course, one of the greatest technologies in the last 20 years, one of the game-changing technologies is the smartphone. It's the culmination of numerous technologies. There's so many technologies that go into a smartphone in order to get there. If you were to imagine, if you were to go back 40 years ago, and I know some of you are not even that old, but if you can imagine, what would it look like to have everything that you have available on this? 40 years ago, with the technology that existed, you would have to, first of all, have a large cart to haul around your television, your radio, your news, weather, everything that, and then you'd have to have a generator to power it all. And honestly, if you went out of your house with your wagon and all of these things so that you could stay at your phone, so you could stay connected to it, people would think you were nuts. It's like, what are you doing with all this stuff? Leave that at home. Because it was never even imagined that it would ever be portable and that you could actually stick it in your pocket. So there's a tremendous, there's just, the smartphone really is a culmination. This is more sophisticated than what they were using on Star Trek back when I was growing up. You know, beam me up, Scotty. And they had nothing come out. I'm like, they totally missed it on that. These are much more amazing devices. So these are powerful tools, and we want to talk about that. But I want to talk about regaining focus, because one of the problems is we're losing focus. And that doesn't mean that things are out of view altogether. I think every one of us here that are adults, that have a little bit of wisdom, have enough of a focus to be able to say, okay, I know the things in life that are important, but I also can recognize that things are getting a little blurry, a little less defined in life. And so as we consider some action steps for regaining focus, we need to look at some of the areas where we are losing focus. And so the first thing I want to look at is we're losing focus on in-person relationships. So if you like to take notes, that would be one you could, we're losing focus on in-person relationships. And that's the great paradox in the digital age. It's provided this 24/7 digital communication to people around the world, but we've become more disconnected to the people right across from us. And this was illustrated in the video clip I played last night from the movie WALL-E, where you've got two guys communicating with each other on screens, not realizing that they're right next to each other. I actually spoke in Africa a few years ago. They were doing a national reading program, and they used my book, Media Choices, Convictions or Compromise, published it in Africa. They got 3,000 teens that agreed to read it and write essays on this book. So I will just give a plug here. I wish some parents would do that here. I wish some organizations would do that here. But they did it in Africa. They said, hey, we got a problem. So they searched far and wide. The organizer of that annual reading event, where they're trying to elevate reading in Africa among young people, it's a Christian organization, so they want Christian books. And they went on a search. He was at the leader, his name's Johnny Gathuku, was in Indonesia at an international youth ministers gathering. And he goes to the other youth pastors and youth workers, and he says, can anybody help me out? Is there a book that has been written for young people that deals with media and entertainment from a Christian worldview? Because if there is, I want to publish it in Africa for our annual reading program. And there was a man from South Africa named Rudolf Kabutz, and he says, yeah, there's a book by an author in America named Philip Telfer. It's called Media Choices, Convictions or Compromise. It's exactly what you're looking for. So you can find it on Kindle. So he did. Johnny found it on Kindle, and he read it. He's like, this is the book. This is what we need. So then he calls me from Nairobi, Kenya, And, so anytime you get a phone call from Nairobi, do you answer it? Would you? Yeah, some prince has died and left me $5 million if I'll give my mother's maiden name and my social security number and bank info, right? So, no, I didn't answer the phone call. And he called twice, and I never answered it. And he never left a message. Eventually, he was able to contact me, and I realized it was legit. He wasn't leaving me $5 million. And instead, he was wanting to publish this book. And so 3,000 teens read it, wrote essays, and then my wife and I went over there for the awards gala, which 1,500 kids were at the awards gala. They'd all read the book. They'd all written essays. And I spoke with parents groups there. And all this to say that this is not something that just the United States is dealing with. This is global. It's a global issue. And one of the things I really appreciated about the Christians that we interacted with a lot in Africa was that they were very hungry for information. They were very hungry to say, like, get help. And like, what can we do? Because technology is come upon them very suddenly, as opposed to us, which has been very gradual. So we have this new culture of distraction, and it's shallow, it's more artificial, especially with social media. And in fact, when I was in Africa, they have unique issues there. Of course, they use WhatsApp a lot for their social networking. And there was a young couple on staff of this ministry called Tamazi, and they shared their testimony with me when I went and spoke there. And they said, we want to thank you for your book. Johnny made all the staff read the book, and so my wife and I read it, and we got convicted because we've been spending more and more time communicating to one another, even while we're in the same room, through WhatsApp. And we weren't even talking with one another. We have young children. We were becoming more distracted to our children. And this was a wake-up call for us. And so we decided, let's recalibrate, let's regain some focus. And then he said, then we discovered we had all this time on our hands that we didn't know we had. And what are we going to do with this time? So he said, so I began sitting my family down and opening up the Word and beginning to lead my family in devotions and spend more time connecting with my wife. He says it's revolutionized our family. And so this is an example of just, they didn't get rid of their smartphones. I talked to another young man. This was interesting. He was a college student. He was maybe 20 years old. And this guy was cool. He was a filmmaker. And I mean, like, I'm not from Africa, but I could just tell this guy's cool. He's got the cool factor. And he came and talked to me. He says, hey, I read your book. He wasn't a teen in the program, but somehow he got a copy of it. And he said, this really made me rethink. And he said, so I went ahead and I sold my smartphone and I bought a flip phone. And he says, and just that change, he says, it's revolutionized my life. Later on, though, as I was talking with Johnny about this, or somebody else on staff, I said, hey, I met this guy. He told me a story. And he says, Philip, what you don't understand is that there is a new word, a new derogatory term in Swahili that's been made to shame any young person who does not have a smartphone. And so this young man, this cool filmmaker, happening guy, willingly is taking on contempt from peers for trading in his smartphone and going to a flip phone. But he did that not because of some legalistic rule, but because he's benefiting by it. He's personally benefiting by it. His heart and his soul and his in-person relationships are being benefited. So we are continuing to grow towards a culture where we're spending more time on screens than we are interacting with each other. There's also something that's actually known today, because most of the time parents really want me to speak to kids, and that's good, but I need to speak to parents now. They have something that's known today as distracted parent syndrome. It was kind of, that's what was modeled yesterday in the little theatricals. So yeah, this has become a problem where parents are so distracted that children no longer have their parents' attention because mom and dad are on the phone. And guess where your kids are learning about it? So this is something we need to model better. Now, with these superficial and shallow relationships, I want a little quick tip for our young people to understand what has value in life, because that's the thing. The enemy's always lying. That's what Satan does. Satan lies. He's the father of lies, and he's always spinning webs of lies. And one of the lies in this generation is that all of these social media connections have great value for you. You know, these are valuable connections. That's why you've got to pursue them. You're going to benefit by these, except that young people are not benefiting by these. The research has been demonstrated that, especially among teenage girls, the more time they spend on social media, the more depressed, suicidal, and anxious they become. It's become such a problem. Nobody's denying it. Nobody's saying that's not true. This isn't really happening. No. It actually is happening, and they have the research to show the more time young people spend on social media, they don't actually become better off for it. It actually is a detriment to them. So let's combat lies with truth. So let's talk about values, understanding values. What is valuable, and so what is intrinsic versus perceived value? And so when we say value, we have to remember, parents, our children sometimes don't. These are big concepts, so you have to boil them down. You have to make them simple. So if we say values, let's just say, well, what do you value above other things in your life? So if you were to put them in orders, what do you value more than something else? Does that make sense? I think even a child could understand that. You know, if they had 10 Matchbox cars, and that's what they're into, they probably could tell you, this is my favorite, this is my second favorite, and down to 10, they could probably put them in order for you. They value this one more than this one, but they value them all. So when we talk about values, let's talk about what has intrinsic value, because gold is intrinsically more valuable than tinfoil. Okay? This is not debatable. Someone offered you a roll of tinfoil or a pound of gold, what would you take? You're going to take the pound of gold, because it has intrinsic value. Bitcoin is presently more valuable than chocolate coins. That could change at some point, but presently Bitcoin has greater value than chocolate coins. And a Tesla Roadster has more value than a kick scooter. But a child without wisdom, if given the choice, will pick the tinfoil, the chocolate coins, and the kick scooter. You see, there's a lack of wisdom and understanding of what's value. So they need help from us to say what actually has value. And then the big question is, what has eternal value? So what has eternal value in life? So as we regain focus, we need to help them understand that real, in-person, face-to-face relationships are intrinsically more valuable than social media connections. Okay, this is gold to tinfoil. Okay, can social media have some value? Yes, it can. But is it as valuable as in-person, face-to-face relationships? No, it's not as valuable. But that's been turned upside down in our culture. And the culture is saying, no, not in person, face-to-face, but social media connections are more important than the people around you. That's a lie. And it's so we need to combat that. Okay, let's look at another area where we're losing focus. We're actually losing focus on physical well-being with today's technology. You know, there's something called text neck today that chiropractors are dealing with in children and adults. Text neck. Okay, you get the point. Okay, look at the posture here. You do that enough, you're going to be seeing the chiropractor. And he's going to say, this is a classic case of text neck. You know? It's like ruining even. So there's just one small example. There's changes in neurophysiology. There's a ton of interesting research happening about that. There's interference with good diet. This has been known for many years. Interference with exercise because we have a more sedentary lifestyle. That's changing. They've been able to track just the BMI or body mass index. All these things have been noted that our use of technology is affecting these things. Our adrenal system is being taxed. The dopamine system in the brain is being distorted. All right, so by the way, this dopamine, this is the same process. This is the pleasure center of the brain that produces dopamine. There's a natural function of that God has ordered in our life, and that there are ways to take that natural and make it unnatural. Of course, you can do that through toxic drugs. That'll do it. You put toxic chemicals into your body to produce pleasure, and it kills you in the process and makes you feel horrible when you're off of them. Or you can play video games for 5 hours a day, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours, as some do. And the process is still the same. They've actually done the studies that what happens, it's just at a different level. You know, whereas you put chemicals in your body to produce a high, it triggers the dopamine system to flood your body with dopamine. And then you have the crash afterwards. But then the body says, that wasn't normal, and the way God ordered our body is to heal. And so God wants our bodies to heal. And so the body starts trying to heal. It tries saying, well, that's out of order. Let's reset. And so this is how addiction happens, is that when you keep flooding the unnatural levels of dopamine in the system, then the body's going to keep trying to adjust to those new levels, and then the person doesn't feel that high anymore. So that doesn't just work with drugs. It's the same process is happening with video games, pornography, gambling addictions. All of these are still using the same mechanisms. Now, it's not. Here's some examples. You know, if you're doing like hard drugs or something, it can trigger the dopamine system to like extraordinary amounts, like over 1,000% type of thing. But what's interesting is that something like extended play, video game play, will actually trigger the dopamine system up to 100% of its natural process. So as opposed to, let's just say you love chocolate cake. There was some nice chocolate dessert today. I had a piece. It was very yummy. I like chocolate. So when I see that chocolate, I'm like, ooh, you know, there's some anticipation. I'm eating my lunch first. It's sitting there in front of me. I was warned ahead of time to get it early, or else it would be not there. So I got my chocolate pie, and I'm looking forward to it. Then I eat it, and it's like, ooh, it's yummy. And guess what? Then the dopamine system gets triggered, and I start feeling good because I'm eating chocolate. And then, you know, my stomach says I'm full, and other chemical processes start to happen, and it just kind of tapers off. You know, I'm not on a chocolate high right now. You know, it's like it didn't last that long, maybe 5 minutes. But it was good, chocolate cake, you know. So when they track these things, that type of experience can raise your dopamine levels about 50%. But it's not sustained. It's short-lived, and it comes back down. That's normal. That's just kind of a normal process. Video games, guess what the percentage is? It's 100%. 100%. It drives the dopamine system to its extent. But here's what's unnatural. There's some other things in life, we're not going to talk about them right now because there's kids in the room, but you know, there are other things that drive it to 100%, but it's limited. So what's happening with video games is it's being unnaturally sustained for hours on end and days on end, and it's wrecking the whole system, and it's creating addiction. So these are things you just need to know. I gave these statistics yesterday, but if you weren't here, I'd like to just repeat them. This is from the CDC. Children ages 8 to 10 spend about 6 hours a day in front of a screen using entertainment media. So that's not schoolwork. Children ages 11 to 14 spend about 9 hours a day in front of a screen using entertainment media. And according to the CDC, children ages 15 to 18 spend about 7.5 hours a day in front of a screen using entertainment media. So we're losing focus. Yes? Oh, yeah. So one of the kids asked, what is it for adults? Okay, yeah, so according to Nielsen ratings, it's 11 hours for adults. Now, that may also include like radio or podcasts or things like that. It didn't really, but it was not real clear on where they drew the line. This is very clear. This is talking about entertainment media. But as we talk about our physical well-being, another thing we're losing focus on is our need for good sleep. For rest, right? Amen? Rest. Daily, weekly rest, but we're losing focus on our need for good sleep. And things, once again, like blue light. Most people, does anybody have a basic understanding of how blue light affects you? Okay, I'll give you just a primer here. Okay, blue light, all light has spectrum. So, we can look at lights around us, and these lights over here are more like a warmer light. They're going to be, there's a temperature scale, and there's warmer light, and then there's a colder, what they call blue light, which is a cold light. That's daylight. So when you go outside in the middle of the day, that light spectrum that you're getting is known as blue light in the spectrum. That is designed, God has worked it into our bodies so that when you are seeing blue light, there's chemical processes that are happening that are being triggered through your eyes, engaging with blue light, and it's one of the things is the production of cortisol, which causes you to be alert. Like, this is daytime, we need to be active. And then, in the natural order of things, the sun begins to set. What happens to the sky? It goes from a cold blue to what? A warm yellow, red, and you're watching it, and it's getting dimmer also. It gets dimmer, and it gets warmer. And then before electronics, before man-made light, people lit their homes with flames. We're not talking about torches. We're talking about, we're not talking about welding torches. We're talking about candles and lamps. What are those, cold or warm? Warm. Are they bright or low light? They're low light. And so when your eyes begin to see the warm light and the lower light, it shuts off the daytime process of chemicals that say stay alert, and it begins to bring in a new cycle into your brain that releases new chemicals. Melatonin is one of those. And it begins to say it's time to get sleepy. It's time to wind down. It's time to let the brain kind of rest. So what happens when you're staring at a screen at 10, 11, midnight, and the screens are producing, you think they're producing warm light or blue light? They're actually producing blue light. You can configure, and I do. In fact, I had to take my configuration off of when I'm doing presentations, otherwise it would look all like yellow, because I keep my computer all the time set to warm, and same thing with my phone, constantly. So there are things you can do. That's part of regaining focus. Yeah, you can schedule. I have mine scheduled permanently, unless I'm editing video. Can't do it. You can't do it while you're editing video. But but the thing is we're disrupting sleep by constantly exposing ourselves, even to a phone, late at night, and exposing ourselves to light, and it's telling our brain to stay alert. And now we have all sorts of sleep issues in our country. So That's just one. We could spend a lot of time talking about any of these issues, but I'm very intrigued with Dr. Victoria Dunkley's research. She says electronic screen devices irritate the brain and overstimulate the nervous system. So it's not just the blue light, it's also how these things are stimulating your nervous system. She refers to this as electronic screen syndrome, or ESS for short. And she says one way to think about this syndrome is to view electronics as a stimulant. In essence, not unlike caffeine, amphetamines, or cocaine, electronic screen device use puts the body into a state of high arousal and hyperfocus, followed by a crash. This overstimulation of the nervous system is capable of causing a variety of chemical, hormonal, and sleep disturbances in the same way other stimulants can. And so, once again, one of the many issues. Dr. Victoria Dunkley has an interesting book. It's called How to Reset Your Child's Brain in 4 Weeks, or something to that effect. I've heard her speak several times and have read her book. And so she's a clinician. She's working with kids all the time who come into her office misdiagnosed with ADD, ADHD, bipolar. They're on drugs. And guess what she does? She sits down with the family and helps them get their kids off of electronic media for 4 weeks. And guess what happens? Somehow, mysteriously, the ADD, ADHD, bipolar, drugs, they all go away. And many of these parents have new children. And they're like, what in the world? You know? So there's a lot of interesting studies out there. But Dr. Victoria Dunkley, her book is called How to Reset Your Child's Brain in 4 Weeks, or something like that. Okay, we talked about blue light already. I got ahead of myself. So here's the action step here. Your devices need an earlier bedtime than yours. All right? It's a simple life hack. Just teach yourself this, okay? My devices, parents, this applies to you. This process doesn't just work on children. It's the same process that works in adults. And I know that, so even if you have to work, I mean, I work out of, I have an office, I got a computer in my office. In fact, I got a massive screen. So I need to apply this. I need to know, like, my device needs to have a bedtime that it's at least an hour before mine. Ideally, it's 2 hours, is what they say. But, you know, if you're wanting to just make incremental steps, just tell yourself, all our devices that emit light need to have a bedtime before ours. So if that's your children and their bedtime is 9 o'clock, then what time should screens be turned off? 8 o'clock, no screens. And you should make sure your house, you should begin to make sure you got warm lighting. And if you can dim lights, dim lights. Have them spend the last 15, 20 minutes of the day reading in low light. There's all sorts of things you can do. And if they're having sleep problems, see if that doesn't help. I've got a daughter that is now wearing blue blockers at night because she does have some sleep issues. So, all right. Also, we're losing focus on our spiritual well-being. And I love this quote from A.W. Tozer. Anybody ever hear of A.W. Tozer, the author from Chicago? He wrote many books, one of them which is The Pursuit of God. He once said, he was a pastor, he says, he was commenting on Psalm chapter 4, verse 4, which says, commune with your own heart upon your bed and be still. He goes on to say, is a wise and healing counsel, but how can it be followed in this day of the newspaper, the telephone, the radio, and the television? This is the 1950s. He says, these modern playthings like pet tiger cubs have grown so large and dangerous that they threaten to devour us all. No spot is now safe from the world's intrusion. The need for solitude and quietness was never greater than it is today. Even the majority of Christians are so completely conformed to this present age that they too want things the way they are. That was in like the 50s. He didn't know what was coming. What would he say today? He didn't even, did he even mention? No, he just mentioned radio, television, newspaper. Yeah. So he had there was no internet. There was, but his point is it's really budging in to a devotional life. And you're going to have to fight for it. He was fighting for it in his own era. And now we've got to fight harder to have time alone with the Lord. And we lack quiet time. We lack prayer, seeking God. We have a generation of young people that don't know what it means to be still. This is detrimental. This is detrimental if they can't learn how to be still at all, much less still before God. It's something that is so important to learn how to wait upon the Lord. And of course, Bible reading is on the decline. And then even just biblical koinonia or fellowship is on the decline. So what's the Christian response? Well, people respond in different ways to a lot of these issues. At one end of the extreme, which I rarely see anymore, is aversion and disallowance. That's rare. Meaning like parents that are like super strict and just say, it's not happening in our house. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that is an extreme, because I am a believer that we need to equip our children to be able to navigate these things. And there's a time and place for everything. So, and then the opposite extreme is kind of this heedless enthusiasm. So we're just going along with the current, and we're not even stopping to think deeply about these things as Christians, that we may need to live differently than the world. So in the space in between those is where I land. And so I believe that there are better responses than the extremes. On one extreme, no to everything, kind of living like the Amish. And by the way, I was talking to Keith at lunch today, saying that one of the most interesting groups I've ever spoken to was up in upstate New York, former Amish, Old Order Hutterites, and Old Order Mennonites that have gotten saved. And those groups are not distinctly Christian. So when people embrace the gospel, they get kicked out of these communities. But they were like Amish and Hutterites. And so I ended up meeting a group of them that had a church. They all kind of band together. And guess what? They were having problems with media and technology with their children. So they're the extreme options of just say no to everything. The other extremes just say yes to everything. So what are those better options? First of all, deliberate discernment. That takes wisdom. So we're going to be deliberate about it. We're going to think it through before we say yes. We're going to think it through before we say no. We're going to have a reason why we're doing things in our household. Also, reasonable convictions. And reasonable is important, that we're setting convictions in our home that make sense even to our children as we pass along our values to them. Then there's the importance of just carefully handling these things. And I'll be talking to parents in the next session about that. And then purposeful use. This is so important. Let me just give you an example. Purposeful use of the internet. I've said this for years, since it's become ubiquitous. And this term is not used anymore. Almost nobody uses the term surfing the net, but early on in internet use, surfing was what we'd call doom scrolling today. It was just this idea of like just bored, and I'm going to go on the internet to find something to do. This is one of the worst things that you can happen. That's just like sending your child out into an inner city to wander the streets and see if they can find something to do. Oh, they find something to do. Whether it's good or not is another case. So I told people for years, like, the worst thing you can do is surf the net. Don't do it. Never get on the internet when you're bored. You know, it's just like just never do it. Don't get on your phone because you're bored. All right? To have a purpose. It's a tool. So there's better options here. And then self-control. In fact, one of the things I say is technology is not evil. It's powerful. And, imagine for a moment with me that you're in your backyard, you're grilling hamburgers and hot dogs, and you see your neighbor over the fence, and he's building a shed. And he's doing it old school. He's got a hammer, he's got nails, he's framing it up, it's looking good. You say, hey, Bill, Looks good. Thank you. You know, he's got his hammer in his hand. He's got a nail in the other hand. And that's totally a cool scene. But what happens if the next day you're in the grocery store and you see Bill, and you notice that Bill is walking through the grocery store with his hammer in his hand, and he's fixated on it. And you say, "Hi, Bill," and he hardly even looks up because he's just staring at his hammer. And you're like, well, that's kind of weird. And then the next day, you know, you're driving through the neighborhood and you see Bill walking down the sidewalk and he's got his hammer in his hand and he's staring at it. And then you see him another day, he's in his car driving and he's got his hammer with him and he just won't like. Now, if this was real, what would you say about Bill? Woo! Bill's got a problem. Yeah, I think Bill needs some counseling, you know. You'd say that's bizarre behavior. But as soon as we replace the hammer with a phone, now it's totally normal. No problem here, nothing to see, you know. So once again, this is a powerful tool. It can be a powerful tool, just like a hammer. It has a purpose. But you become fixated on this and you start letting it control your life instead of you being in control of it. Now we have a problem. And that's where we're at right now. Most people, most adults don't know how to get out from under the control. It's like a marionette, you know, that's just controlling you. There we go. I got control of you. You don't even know how to control yourself anymore. Instead of you being the one saying, you know what? You're just a device. And God is Lord of me, and I'm Lord over this. You know, it's like this is in its proper jurisdiction. And when I don't need it, I'm not using it. And when it's useful for me, I'm going to use it. And I'm going to do it in a way that's meaningful. And until we start doing that, our children will never survive. You know, all the changes coming. There's no ancestral wisdom, by the way. I can't go to my parents. My parents live a stone's throw away from me. They live on our property in a home adjacent to ours. And I have a great relationship with them. But I can't go to them and say, Mom and Dad, how did you deal with smartphones when we were kids? And they're like, we didn't have smartphones. Mom and Dad, how did you deal with email and social media? Philip, you know, those things didn't exist when you were kids. I'm like, yeah, so I can't gain wisdom from my parents on this. This is the unique situation that we are in today as parents. We'll talk about that more in the next session. Okay, how much time do I have? I'm losing track. So yesterday I had like a 5-minute card, so. You just tell me to stop whenever I need to stop.
It's more about the content than about time zones.
Yes. Okay. You know what? Let me just see here. I'm just trying to see if I can wrap this up. Yes. So let me exit here. Let me go to just some really quick action steps. Okay, let me get some. Here we go. All right, let's do this. I'm going to go to this slide here. I did the wrong thing. Technology. It's just a tool, but you got to know how to use it. Okay, it's a different. Okay, slideshow from current slide. There we go. All right, we got that. Okay, so here's some action steps. Better, smarter parenting of young children. Matthew Henry once said, the branch is more easily bent when it is tender. Let me say that again. So the great preacher Matthew Henry once said about child training, the branch is more easily bent when it is tender. He was speaking of young children. The younger a child is, the easier it is to kind of shape them in the direction they're going to go. The older they get, the more rigid. You wait until they're teens to deal with some of these things, and branches are going to start breaking. Okay, we'll talk about that in the next session. So don't open doors too early. Just trust me on this. If there's one thing I could tell parents of younger children, just delay, delay, delay. And don't worry. Don't worry. Say, well, my children are going to be behind. Nonsense. It's absolute. Your children will not be behind. They will get ahead. They will be ahead in all these other areas that the rest of the world is getting behind in. Great social skills, personal well-being, creativity and imagination that's going to the wayside. And the truth is that I never had a computer until I was in my 20s. And guess what? I'm very capable. I do video editing. I'm on a computer all the time. You learn fast. They will learn fast. They will not be behind. They'll be ahead. So the founders of Google, Larry Page and Sergey, they were Montessori students. Jeff Bezos was a Montessori student. As a child, Steve Jobs was so tech conscious he didn't let his own children have his devices. And it's been proven that the more you introduce these at earlier ages, you are stunting your children's creativity. They're losing imaginative play, and because screens just fill in all the information for them. They don't have to imagine it. They don't have to think it through. It's just presenting itself to them. So they will be ahead, not behind. Okay, here's another one, is allow boredom to result in non-screen activity. Okay, did you know that in the best dictionary of all times, the Webster's 1828, that if you were to look up the term bored, guess what you're going to find? You're going to find something about drilling a hole into wood. Because the word boredom did not exist in 1828. It's a new word in our lexicon. They didn't know what that was. What's boredom? Boredom happens when you have a lot of leisure time. Little House on the Prairie, there was no boredom on Little House on the Prairie. There was tedium. So we have to deal with boredom because our children have way too much free time. Their lives are not as occupied as children have been in the past. So we need to allow boredom to result in non-screen activity, and it takes more work. I'll talk more about that in the next session too. Also intermittent screen fasting. So take breaks from time to time, and maybe even on a daily basis. You say, hey, we're gonna have a screen-free zone of time, and maybe each week you carve out time, and maybe once a year you say, hey, we're doing like a week-long media fast or something like that. Another action step here is to prioritize presence. That rings good, doesn't it? Just prioritize presence. Prioritize the person in front of you. Okay, just do that. Just say, you know what, you are important to me, not the faceless notification on my phone, not the buzzing that's happening. And, create a new etiquette. There's a new etiquette that we need to develop. So if you're using your phone and there are critical communications, maybe you are an entrepreneur, you have your own business, you're a pastor, and everybody in your church has your phone number, or your wife or children, there are ways to say, okay, do you mind if I be excused for a moment? This is my wife calling. And I don't know anybody who would say no. They're going to say, and they're going to appreciate, oh, thank you for being so thoughtful, because it shows that I'm prioritizing the person across from me. And when you're around, you just keep these things away from the dinner table, and show your children that they mean something to you. Prioritize their presence, okay? All right, replace versus take away. Don't just take things away. You need to give them something better to do with their time, and that's going to cost you more time, money, and energy. The reason we give children electronic devices is because it magically occupies them, and now we don't have to be bothered, It's like the electronic babysitter 2.0, and it starts at a very young age. So I've got all sorts of ideas that I could share with you that we've done as a household. but just ask me those later, and I'll be glad to share them. Also, you need to model it as parents. Model this. Don't just tell your children, hey, this is what we're going to do in the house. You got to demonstrate it. And last one here is entertainment in community. This is something we do in our household. We don't allow the children just to go to every corner of the world and consume entertainment on their own. So we watch movies together as a family. We listen to music together as a family. We do things in community, and that gives us opportunity to talk about them, to assess them. And then finally, let me just give one plug for one of the resources that are in the back table. This is a young adult novel. So if you got a teen in your life, can you imagine trying to teach these concepts and they're not going to want to hear it? So what I did was I just told a compelling story about an aspiring pro video game player who's obsessed with going pro until he finally goes missing and he must face a life or death struggle in a foreign culture that doesn't have a power grid. And so he's about to get a new perspective on what it takes to be a hero. So Why Save Alexander is just another means of me teaching, but through storytelling. And also we have a lot of free resources. So you don't have to scan this now, but you can just go to our website, mediatalk101.org, and you can go to our checkout, just to our store, and all these things, there's quite a few of these things just available for free in the store if you like digital content. So 7 considerations in the age of video games, also a parent's guide to thrive as a family in the digital age. But if you prefer print, we have them in print. And then lastly is my online course, which they're going to be using for these breakout sessions, some of the sessions from there, screentime101.com, which is a comprehensive online course for teens and families. It's totally free, and so avail yourself of those. All right, thank you.
Check.
Deliberate discernment, reasonable convictions, careful handling, purposeful use, prioritize presence, and my favorite, keep the phones away from the dinner table. So thank you for those amazing points. And we're going to continue our evening now with we're going to break out into our breakout sessions. And I'm going to ask for some volunteers for facilitating. We have 2 groups. So parents, you're going to stay here. And by parents, I mean, like if you're preparing to be a parent, or if you're a child care provider of some kind, grandparents as well, and of course parents, you would stay here, and Philip has a special presentation for you. And I would like for all youth and young adults now to choose, if we can get our titles up there, choose the title that is of interest to you. And by youth and young adult, I'm going to say 12 up to, where does a young adult? 35. So I'm not a young adult anymore? All right, so 12 to about 35, and then of course, if you're older than 35 and you're not a parent, you can go to the breakouts as well. And then we're gonna switch, and the parents, you'll get to go to the same breakout session. So the different titles. If you're interested, Okay, so let's face this way. This is like our trivia. If you're interested in going to, and this is youth and young adults, so if you're 15 to 35 and you're interested in going to What Fuels Your Life, you're going to come to the front corner. If you could do that quickly, choose your title that you're interested in, you come to the front corner. If you're age 15 to 35 and you're interested in Technology Isn't Evil, it's powerful, come to this B section front up here. If you're interested in the faucet and losing focus, the faucet and losing focus, I have to face this way, go to the back corner, C. And if you're interested in battling boredom, go to the back, D. And then I'll get a volunteer in each of those groups to facilitate. I already have a facilitator for lesson 16, that's D. So promise if you can go to that back corner there and hold up your sign, then you can join her. Parents, the rest of you, I'm going to ask you to inconvenience yourselves and pick up and come in just a little closer so we can have more of an